Okay, my mic is taped to the floor, probably for the best. So the first thing, I have things to give away. Let's see, we have a iPhone 4S, and in order to win them, I need you to say a prayer. So who's going to say a prayer? We are in a church. Does anyone want a 4S cover? I said it was the whole iPhone, but it's actually a 4S. Anybody going to say the Lord's Prayer for me? No, really? You guys suck. Drink? Yeah, I could do that. So I'm going to drink in a church. That makes me feel sexy. Let's see, what else do we have? We have premium kickstand multifunction folio case. That's definitely worth the Lord's Prayer, right? No? All right, let's hear it. All right, that's a winner. Can you pass that down? We also have a Incipio BlackBerry Bold case. Who wants that? God. Yeah, he has a BlackBerry. I do, but that's because of what I do. But surely somebody here has an iPhone. iPhone? Anybody? All right, let's hear your prayer. There we go. There it is. Pass that down, please. All right. So if anybody wants a BlackBerry thing, you guys can just pass it around until somebody who has one admits to it. Yeah. All right, so most of this is going to be demos. This says approved for public release, distribution unlimited. DARPA basically needed something that they could approve, so we have slides. But most of this is going to be demos. I'm actually going to show you the framework working. Slides are not interesting. Disclaimer, the views expressed are those of the author and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Department of Defense or the U.S. government. I have to say that. Because this is a DARPA Cyber Fast Track project, so I have to say that. So love to DARPA, yay. So DARPA paid for this project. If you're not familiar with Cyber Fast Track, they give you money so you can do your own research and you keep all the rights to it. So basically I went from being junior pen tester at some company and now I am CEO. So love, love, love to DARPA, and if you want to be a researcher, they have just extended it for another year. So you should definitely turn in a project and see if you can get some DARPA funding yourself. They're pretty awesome. So the problem at hand is there's smartphones in the workplace. Pretty scary stuff. Generally, when you think of smartphone and pen test in the same sentence, you think, well, we're going to port Nmap or Metasploit, or this microphone is really echoing, onto our smartphones. But what we're actually going to do here is we're going to attack smartphones from the computer, though it also has an app. So instead of just porting something onto, yeah, you can just turn it off entirely. I'm sure it'll be fine. Everyone can hear me way there in the back, right? Yeah. All right.
I gotta get the recording that has to be on though.
Okay. So, yeah, smartphone pen test framework. We're actually going to be pen testing smartphones. And the idea is we have smartphones in our workplace. They attach to our servers. They have our emails. They have our company's data. Our companies would theoretically like to know what's happening with that data. The problem is with smartphones, we've basically got an out-of-band communication just by default. That's how smartphones work. They attach to the nice, nasty cell tower out there and send out that information. So we would like to know, as a company or as pen testers, what's going on here with the smartphones. They're assets in our environment, and we don't really have any way to test them to see if they're secure at all. So just think about all the things your smartphones are doing in your workplace. So probably you got your company email, so you can come out here at Black Hat, BSides, DEF CON, and pretend like you're still working and not take time off. You can still talk to your customers. Your customers don't even know what's going on. So they have the emails there. They have your data. You probably use a VPN. And I've even seen them generate one-time passwords. So companies create an app where it generates the one-time passwords for their company right there on the phone. So if the app can do it, I can do it too. So threats against your smartphone, one of them is the apps. So we have evil apps. They happen on all the platforms. Apple may say it never happens, but it does. It happens more often on Android, probably because it's easier. But you see malicious apps, they steal your data, they do stuff on your behalf. Generally things we don't like company assets to be doing. Software bugs also happen, as we see with each update. Every time something gets jailbroken, that's a software bug. Every time one of your platforms, there's a jailbreak, that's a software bug that's then being patched. So your apps have their bugs, your kernels have bugs. So your browser, every time it gets popped, that's a bug in the software. Secure software is hard on smartphones too. Social engineering, one people don't think about. I actually recently got this text message from Target, as if it wasn't from Target. And it was on my test phone, so I don't know why they think it's a good idea to send it there. It says, congratulations, your entry in last month's drawing won you a free $1,000 Target gift card. Enter this number at target.com.pdf.biz. So, right, if I'm not a clued-in user who realizes that the actual URL there is not target.com, it's .pdf.biz. But, your average user, oh, cool, let's log into with our Target credentials so we can claim our gift card. And, we all use the same password everywhere, always. So, can our users be tricked into clicking on things? Can our users be tricked into downloading applications? That is a question we'd naturally want to know. People want me to do phishing attacks during my assessments all the time, but I send them emails. But what if I do it to their phone too? Jailbreaking. Our users are often jailbreaking their phones. We generally don't want them to do this in our environment. Can we actually tell if they're jailbroken? I actually did a talk a couple months ago, and someone raised their hand and said, all I have to do is change the SuperUser app to SuperUser 1, and then my MDM system does not see it. So I'm able to have a jailbroken phone. So we can't really assess whether they're actually jailbreaking their phones and what risk that gives us if the MDM solution, which is really our only solution at this point, can't detect it. So, my question. My client wants to know if their environment is secure. Their environment includes smartphones. If I don't assess those smartphones, can I really give them any indication whether it's secure or not? But there's really nothing in place right now that allows us to assess the security of the smartphones from a network pen test perspective. We just saw some stuff about apps out there. There's actually been a lot of work done. Is your third-party app secure? And that's awesome, but that's not the whole question. That's a part of the question that's definitely useful, but we need to look at the other side here as well, which is what I focused on, kind of thinking of the smartphones as part of the network pen test. So what's out there now? You can pen test from the smartphone. Generally, when people hear of my project, the smartphone pen test framework, they're like, okay, so you ported Nmap to your smartphone. Oh my God, you're so awesome. Not really. There's lots of people who've done that. Example of one, Zianti. There's even smartphone live CDs that actually put all the tools for smartphones into one distribution, kind of like Backtrack. Mobisec is an example of that. We can pen test smartphone apps from like Mercury, and then the one that you just talked about out there, right? That's pen testing the apps. So there's been a lot of good work in that area, which is definitely useful to the future of smartphone security. But pen testing the actual devices themselves, I leave with a question. There's not really anything for that. So the structure of my framework is I basically have a big server, or it could be a small server, like that small. And it's going to run our pen test framework. We have our smartphones here. Oh, I have to be on the mic. I can't get that far. So we have our client computers, so we can work together, a bunch of us on a pen test. We can actually control this from the smartphones themselves. And what we're after is these guys, our clients' smartphones, that we hope to take over. So this has a framework console, so we can run this in just a menu-based console. This is all just Perl, so if you have Perl on your computer, it'll run. You can run this in Backtrack right now, like it says Backtrack 5 on the background. That's where I built it. We also have a framework GUI, which my mom wrote, because she's a better GUI programmer than me, so she put a nice front end onto this. So your web server needs to have Perl, which Backtrack 5 currently does not, so this will not run in Backtrack by default, but if you just download XAMPP or any other little thing. My mom wrote that. Yeah, my mom has a PhD in computer science. She got it when I was 2. The idea that women couldn't be in computer science never really made any sense to me, because she was, so yeah. So yeah, my mom wrote that. We'll look at it. But again, you have to have Perl on your web server, so that won't work on Backtrack by default right now, but you just download something like XAMPP. We're going to look at just a Ubuntu VM running it all, so again, really easy to install. Yeah, there's more of the GUI, but we're going to look at it. DARPA made me write slides, you know. They have to approve something. There's also an app, so we can actually control it from the app as well. But the main point of what this does is it actually allows us to use the smartphone we already have to send like SMS-based attacks. Most of the stuff you see, it uses like a paid thing out in the cloud that you pay at 10 cents and it sends an SMS for you through a gateway. But you're already paying for SMS service, so why not just use the SMS service you already have on your smartphone? Or if you're a pen test company, get your boss to buy you a lot of new smartphones to play with so you can use them in the pen test. So we actually attach the framework to your actual phone to send the attacks, and we will look at that as well. So another nice screenshot of that. And another. So what we can test for with this right now, remote vulnerabilities, so remote attacks against your smartphone, client-side vulnerabilities, so is your browser vulnerable? If we can get somebody to click on a link, can we pop their browser? If we can get them to open a PDF. Same sort of things we're testing for on our actual PC platforms. Social engineering, can I get somebody to just download an app that I send them in a text message? You might be surprised. Local vulnerabilities, so after I've actually exploited their phone, can I do privilege escalation? Can I gather data from their phone? Is it just sitting there unencrypted for me to steal? So there's a lot of examples about this, but I don't really want to go through them. I'd rather just show you this, right? So I'm going to actually attack my iPhone. So remote vulnerability example, we're going to look for the default password on the iPhone. And if you had heard about what I did at Hope, this is where somebody wiped my iPhone. So I'm going to show you the IP address of the vulnerable phone. So naturally, you're all just going to log in and wipe it for me. But I would appreciate it if you waited until after the demo, and then you're free for all. Whoever can do the best exploit on my iPhone, you win. So you're going to know the default password is there. So let's actually get started looking at this thing. I'd much rather show you it working than talk about slides. So I have my little Ubuntu VM, so it just has XAMPP on it, so it had Perl for the web server. And my password is password, just in case you're wondering. So the first thing we have is we just have a little config file, so it's just text-based. This is really small, and I should make it bigger so you can see it. That's not much bigger, is it? Zoom in. How's that? Can we see it now? Yeah, that looks much better. And I said, nano, don't shoot me. So it just has a little text-based config file, so you just give it, where's your SQL server, what's my IP address, what's my password. Again, my password for my MySQL server is password, so please God, don't take down my MySQL server. Just other default stuff in here, so stuff the framework needs to know, so we just change the options here and we never have to worry about them again. Actually, let me make sure my IP addresses came out right when I restarted everything. I have to give you a little caveat here. I did run this at the Arsenal at Black Hat twice today. I ran everything and every demo worked. So I think I've run out of karma with the demo gods, so if this thing falls on its face, don't blame it. The demo gods can only favor me so long. Yes, that's the right IP address, and my IP address of my SQL server. Great, I'm going to make it even easier for you. Here's the SQL server you can take down. 1.2. Yes, that is in there correctly. Alright, so I'm just going to fire this thing up and start showing you how it works. So I just ran framework.perl and it made up a nice little menu thing for us. Again, all we need here is Perl, so most of your Linux distributions are just going to be able to run this by default. So the first thing I wanted to show you was that remote attack, so it's actually going to try the default SSH password. So all I'm going to need to know from my client is what are your IP addresses. A lot of our other attacks are going to go like over the mobile modem, but this one in particular is not. Let's find my IP address. 10.0.1.3, and like I said, please wait. You can take it out afterwards. I don't care. The people at Hope did not wait. They were not kind. They took out my iPhone, and I had to show the video, and we don't like to have to show videos. Alright, so I just want to test for the default SSH password. That's currently the only remote attack in here, so I just kind of wrote a subset of each section for the DARPA project with Hope that will add in more CVEs in each section as we go. Users will say, I want this function, and we will put it in. For instance, I did the ISD podcast last week, and they said, I want Postgres SQL support, because this currently only runs MySQL, so that's going to be the next feature. So we will add more things as they come. So I want to test for that default SSH password. I give it the IP I want to attack. It asks me, is that correct? I say yes. And now it tries to log in. And it should work here unless one of you has taken out my phone. And it's just running per expect, so it actually will take a second. If this demo fails, I mean, we'll really know the demo gods hate me. How much easier can you get than a default password? And it looks like that's exactly what's happening. It does, oh, I just lost connection. Oh, nice. Yeah, I tried to put, but it's not in there. Oh, there it goes. It made it. Awesome. All right. So we did manage to log in, and then what it actually does is if it's successful, it logs in over SFTP and actually installs a post-exploitation agent in there. So okay, that came out very wrong. Like I said, the demo gods will not favor me anymore today. It says it is not vulnerable, but it did install an agent. That makes 0 sense. 0 sense whatsoever. Okay, we're going to make that run again and see if it fixes itself. I have never seen anything so strange. Yes, that is correct. Now work properly. Thank you. Should we say a prayer to the demo gods? Please, demo gods, please favor me with your love just one more time. These people came out here to hear me talk at BSides Las Vegas, which we all know is way cooler than Black Hat. Come on. All right, so it went, but is it going to say it was vulnerable? Well, it's at least installing it at the very least. So what it's doing is it's logging in. Yes, there we go. Vulnerable, yes. So it does indeed have the default SSH password, and it does have an agent, and I believe we just saw a bug. All right, so let's see what else this thing can do. Slides. Client-side vulnerabilities. So remote attacks are awesome, but think about Windows 7 and your Windows 2008 and such. There's not as many remote attacks anymore. MSO 8067 was a sad thing of the past. You can't do that on your most modern platforms anymore. So we're going to see a lot more client-side attacks. That's what we see in our pen tests against PCs as well. We are popping people's browsers. We're getting them to download PDFs for us. Things like that, giving up their passwords to a phishing attack. So a lot of this will probably, as it progresses, turn out to be the same. So right now we just have a client-side attack in here where it will try and exploit your browser. So I just imported some exploit code for a browser exploit into it, and it also gives you the option to directly download an app. So I say, oh, this is an awesome Angry Birds add-on, and nobody would ever download that. Better than that, though, I got this text message from T-Mobile, who runs my Android, and it said, as a premium handset subscriber, you have the right to download this awesome security app. I click on it naturally, because I'm a curious user who doesn't care about, browser exploits. And it sends me to a third-party app store that, has the nice T-Mobile logo up at the top, but, I can go to the internet and grab that. And then it wants me to download this app. So users are actually seeing this. So this is something we wonder as a corporation. Are my users falling for this? So we can actually test it with this. So let's look at a couple examples of that. You guys can take out the iPhone if you want to. Alright, so the first thing I actually want to do is, since I'm going to send SMS messages, so to try and get people to answer and download my apps and whatnot, I actually need to first attach a mobile modem, so I'm going to attach it to one of my emulators. So it will actually use that modem for its attacks. So I have the Framework Android app here, and I'm going to attach that to my server. Let's look at the server first. So option number 4, attach framework to a mobile modem. Search for an attached modem is currently in the works. You can just put in a USB modem with a SIM card in it, and it will actually use that. But I like the attached to smartphone app better. You can just use the phone you've got, and it's still functional. It just runs in the background. I just have to give it the phone number of the phone I want to attach to. I have to give it a control key. This is any 7-digit key that's just used for communication between the app and the server. So it just has to be the same between the two. My default always to use is key 1, which is not a particularly good key, but it's easy to type. And then I give it a URL path to check in. Again, that just needs to be the same between the two of them. So this is B-Sides Demo, so I'll call it that. B-Sides Demo. Is that correct? I say yes. And then it just waits for my app to show up. I just need to tell it the IP I want it to attach to, so where my server is. I just give it the same path, B-Sides Demo. And give it the key. And again, that just needs to be the same. Click Setup, and these two basically just do a TCP handshake together, and they're now connected, and now by sending commands from this control console, we can now tell our modem inside of that smartphone to do things on our behalf. For instance, let's look at running a social engineering or client-side attack. So number 6, I have 2 options. I can tell them to directly download an agent, or I can put up a malicious web page and get a shell, hopefully, if their browser is vulnerable. So let's look at the direct download first. It wants to know what sort of smartphone I'd like to attack, so which agent it needs to put up, so an Android agent, iPhone, or BlackBerry. Let's say Android, since we're using Android emulators here. Hosting path, so again, where I want to put it, just on that web server. B-Sides Demo 1 works for me. And the file name, just what I want to call it. So I'll just call it B-Sides Demo 1.apk. I could be a lot more stealthy about this. It's like, what is that? I could call it Angry Birds. Phone number to attack, so where I actually want to send this text message. I'll just attack another one of my emulators. I didn't clear the database. So it gives me an option of 2 mobile modems, both of which have the same number, but the one I just attached was number 2, so let's use that one. The first thing you generally want to do is clear the database. Well, it should work anyway. And there we go. So from 5554, we got a text message. That's our guy with the framework app. 5554. We got a text message that says, hey, this is a cool app. You should download it. And we as the user in your environment will be like, oh, awesome, Angry Birds. I like Angry Birds add-ons. I don't know. So then they would download it and install it. And it'll call back to us and say, yep, that worked. So we can also do the same thing. Number 6, run a social engineering or client-side attack and do a client-side shell. So in this case, we're just going to put up a malicious web page. And currently the attack that it has in it is the WebKit vulnerability for Android. Again, we're just going to port more of them in. The initial public release for this, it is going to be open source under BSD license, and it's coming out on Sunday when I do my Sky Talks talk at DEF CON. So this will all be available to you, and then I'll add more stuff and fix bugs that you guys find, as you will. Can you, you can't at this point spoof the sending phone number, but if you just put a prepaid SIM into your phone, then it'll use whatever that is. So that's generally what people would do to use it if they didn't want to give their clients their phone numbers. Just put a SIM card in it that's either your work pays for or a prepaid one. So it just uses the SIM card that's in there. So again, I just need to tell it where to put it. I can put that as whatever I want. It'll just create that on the web server. And the file name. And it's going to create a nice malicious web page that, if it works correctly, will send a shell back to our server, which will be listening for it. Again, I'll just attack that same emulator, and again it says you have these two modems attached, which oddly enough have the same phone number, but we'll just do the one we just did, and now it sits and waits for that shell to show up, which would require the text message to show up first, but it could take like up to, I think, 30 seconds. We had one demo work. The demo gods are listening again. It's just sitting in the downloads waiting for you to run it. They'd actually have to install it. And now it doesn't want to actually send me the message, which is unfortunate. So now it's just going to sit there and wait infinitely. But actually, if I go back to my text messages, I should actually be able to finagle it into working. Like, that should still be sitting there. So like the last time it did work, that malicious page is still sitting there. So that they actually got the text message like they're supposed to. Then they open up the page and it's trying to exploit their browser. And again, I didn't write the exploit myself, so that's just exploit code for the WebKit vulnerability that's sending a shell back to me once it crashes. Right, or you can have it be on the same server, or you can use a web server somewhere else as long as you have rights to write to it. And there we go. So it popped their browser. So that page crashed. Typical browser exploit. Again, I didn't write any new browser exploit. It's just a CV that I ported in. And currently what it does for the demo is it just runs one command. It basically says, who am I, and then closes it and calls to the database and says, yes, this was vulnerable. So they clicked on it and they were indeed vulnerable, and stores that in the database for you to put in your report. In future releases, I'll have this so it'll throw the shell back to you so you can do things like post-exploitation to try and get root. But right now it just shuts it and takes you back to our menu. And usually I let people do things like waterboard me when the demos don't work, but I get tired of being put on the waterboard, so you'll have to come up with something else for this one. You can buy me a drink maybe, except they're free, so speaking of which. So that was 1.5 demos working. Come see it at the Arsenal tomorrow. I'm sure it'll work again. I'll pray really hard tonight. All right, so back to the slides. So also our social engineering kind of falls in with that client-side stuff. So I think SMS is the new email in terms of spam. Spam filters work. SMS doesn't really have a filter unless you block the number. So I think that's where spammers are going, like that target email or a target SMS. So I think that's the future of spam. So will our users download random apps like that T-Mobile app? Will they click on links that exploit their browser? Will they answer phishing attacks? Question we want to know. Questions we've wanted to know for a long time. But now we're just making it possible to find out on the smartphones as well. We also have things like local vulnerabilities. So, smartphones have local kernel vulnerabilities just like everything else. So are they vulnerable to this? How do we really know? If we can get them to download our agent, we can then run privilege escalation as well as other things against them. So it has Rage Against the Cage in it right now for the Android, so it'll just try and see if it can get those root privileges. Right now it just drops them. In the future, it'll give you those privileges so you can do more things with it. But for right now, it just says, yes, it worked, and then drops them. So other things with post-exploitation, we just saw the command shell, so it gives you a command shell. Or we get an app-based agent that has payloads in it, so we can send it via HTTP or via SMS. We can send it commands to tell it to do things like send an SMS, or tell me all your contacts, or what SMSs have you received, or do a local privilege escalation. So let's look at controlling an app, or an agent rather. So I've got an agent deployed on this one already. It should already be, since I didn't clear the database, actually already hooked up. No, there are no available agents, so I need to actually attach to one. So the first thing I want to do is actually attach to an agent. So I just need to give it some information for the database. Just give it the phone number. The main control number, though, it will ask you, as we've seen it asking, since it has 2 modems in it, which modem we want to use for an SMS-based attack. Give it the URL path. All the code, again, for this is going to be released, so you can change things in the source code if you want to make this meet your specific needs before you deploy it. So mine in my code is Android Agent 1. And again, I give it a 7-digit control key. It doesn't have to be the same one. Again, it just has to be the same one that's in the code. So in my case, it is key 1. And it wants to know what platform this is. To the user of the framework, it'll seem really streamlined. You won't see any difference whether it's Android, iPhone, or BlackBerry, but it will make a difference from the computing standpoint. So it just wants to know so it can make decisions. Is all this information correct? No, it is not at all correct. But why is it coming in backwards? But that works. I'm finding all sorts of bugs talking to you guys. Alright, so now let's send commands to an agent. So now we have that agent in there we can send commands to. The current post-exploitation functionality is we can make it send an SMS for us, we can make it take a picture. If it has that functionality and doesn't have some sort of block on it, it'll just say it failed if it can't, but it will try and take a picture. And it will actually upload that picture to you if it is successful. It can pull their contacts database, which does not work on an emulator, oddly enough. That's an emulator problem, but it will work. It's just the functionality to tell it to pull contacts doesn't work on an emulator. But if you do this on your actual phone, it'll return all your contacts and upload them to the server. You can also get your SMS database. For size, I just limited it to the last 10 you got. So it'll say who sent it to you and what it said. And it'll also do a privilege escalation attack. So here on the Android, it will try and root you with Rage Against the Cage. And we could easily port in additional ones. So anything that's ever been used to root one of these devices or in a jailbreak, we can just port the code into here and it'll try them. For instance, let's take a picture. It gives me the option, do I want to deliver this via SMS or HTTP? We've looked at a couple things with SMS already. Let's do HTTP. So our agent is periodically going to check in. I say periodically because if we had it check in constantly, that would run down our battery. We don't like that. And I know you can do like push things with Google, but then you have to register with Google, and somehow I don't think Google or anybody else would like me using it for this. So it does use the old check-in method. So that's going to be running in the background, and again, the agent checks in periodically, so should upload that picture to the database. But while that's going, let's see what else my slides say. Then I want to show you the GUI and the app as well. So the question is, if I used SMS, would it show up in SMS history? And it does not. The agent actually swallows SMS. If you're familiar with some of my previous work with the Android botnet that used SMS, it's really the same concept. It just swallows the SMSs, so you never see them. which Android makes that particularly easy. Demos, we've been doing that the whole time. So we'll talk about that after I show you the rest of the demos. Let's see if it's come back yet. View information. No, it did not come back yet. Hopefully it will, or that will be another failed demo, and we don't like those. Let's look at the app. Where'd my app go? Did it crash? Looks like it. That shouldn't actually make it stop working, though, since we used HTTP. Actually, let me show you the GUI and then attach it to there. Let's just kill this guy off. She wrote it all in like just Perl and HTML, so it's all Perl. I didn't know you could do like GUI stuff with Perl, but apparently you can. It was her idea to use Perl, actually. I had never used Perl before, as when you read my code, you might notice there were some things I really should have known before I did this. Kill off my children. It does not clean it up itself up nicely yet. Okay. Alright, so let's look at the GUI and then have it reattached. So let's restart this guy. So we've started up menu.perl, and this is my mother's lovely handiwork. It does all of the same stuff, just within a nice menu-based way. Let's just clear our database, which we should have done. So this actually will just destroy all of the information that's in there. So any of our attacks we've run, any information we've gathered from an agent, we're going to delete it and start again. So it just recreates the database new for us. So the first thing I want to attach to that mobile modem. So again, it's just nicely menu-based for us here. Oh, and it remembers what I've said. How nice. And then it again is just going to wait for us. And they do their TCP handshake. And so here from the actual app, we can run a subset of functionality. Like we can't destroy the database because that would detach the app, so that would be counterproductive. But we can run things like attacks. So we see the same things, our remote attacks, client-side attacks, sending commands to an agent. There's currently no agents attached since I killed the database. But for instance, if we hit remote attack, which platform do we want to attack? So if I choose iPhone, it gives me the option of that default SSH, and then we give it the IP, and it'll actually run that attack right here. So in this case, since it's going to be network-based, it's just going to call back to the server and tell it to do it. Same thing here with our client sides. We can run them here as well. Like do a browser exploit against Android, and it gives us that CVE. We fill in that same information, and it will just send it right here from this modem. It doesn't give us the choice in this case, since we're actually sitting on that modem. It will run it from this modem directly and call back to the server and tell it what to do. Let's actually attach it to an agent again, so we can look at that. So nice how it remembers everything for me. So I've attached it to that agent again, and then from here, this may not work right off the bat because it needs to update. Oh, yeah, there it goes. So it pulls our agents from the database and will actually let us do our sending commands to our agents right here from the app. 10 minutes. All right, so like I can send an SMS like right from here. Who do I want to send an SMS to? Let's go after my third emulator again. Helps if you write the correct number. Like I want to say hi. And then we see, I just sent it twice. I'm not sure why I did that. See, I've demoed it a lot today. But we see that it came from the number 5556, which if you notice, we use this same emulator to do our client-side attacks, and those all came from 5554, which is the one that has the app, whereas 5556 is the one that just looks normal here, and this is all running in the background. So actually from that agent, and we just told it to send an SMS to somebody else. So whether that's useful or not in a pen test, I don't know. That's just functionality I knew how to do really well because of the botnet thing, so I just included it. So, yeah. That's pretty much all that's in there for the functionality right now. So let's talk briefly about the future of the project. So I want to add more modules in each category. Obviously, right now we've kind of just got this demoing subset of things we can do. There's been a lot more client-side CVEs against smartphones than just that one I showed you. I want to put in more post-exploitation options, so let you keep the shell, let you keep your privilege escalation if you run a root, keep those privileges and install system-level stuff. Want to put in more things, like right now it just takes a picture and does SMS for remote control. It'll only take your contacts and take your SMS for gathering information. So I want to add more things here, pulling your email and whatnot. I want to continue with integration with other tools like Social Engineer Toolkit and Metasploit. And what I'm really interested in is community-driven features. I want to see people use this when it releases on Sunday and say, I really want this functionality. For instance, the ISD podcast guys hadn't even seen it yet, and they're like, PostgreSQL would be really nice. So that's what we're adding next. So, and I also want more reporting capabilities. Right now, it really just spits out the database and says, here's who we attacked, were they vulnerable, did we get an agent, these are the information we have about the agent. I want to have it write a nice pretty report for you because I hate reporting. I know we all do, so. And this is me. I'm Georgia, and again, this is going to be released on Sunday during my Sky Talk, so it'll be open source, BSD licensing, pretty much do whatever you want with it. So if you're interested, I do have business cards, but that's all I have for now, and I have a few minutes for questions if anybody has any more. You mean the stuff running on the app? Like on the smartphones? Yeah, everything that runs on the server is all Perl, so if you have Perl on your system, then all of that will run. So the stuff for the agents themselves, anything that runs on the smartphone is going to be in that smartphone's language, so Java for your Android, and then some really messed up version of C for the iPhone and whatnot. I mean, really, they just took C and beat it over the head. Yes, all of that, including the agents, all of the source code, you just open it up in Eclipse and change anything you want. So yeah, everything you see here is going to be included in the open source along with a nice little PDF that tells you how to install everything and how to run everything with lots of nice screenshots that I originally wrote for DARPA. So yeah, everything you see here will be included in the open source release. Anything else? Well, thank you all for coming out. It's the last talk of the day, so I really appreciate it.
Once again, this talk next week will be an Iron Geek. Great talk.
Thank you.